OK. We've built 3 layers. Now, one question is why we don't just stop here. Why don't we stop at 3 layers and declare success? It seems like we have successfully built the internet and connected everyone together. So why don't we stop here? Well, there's a couple of big issues. One issue is that so far, we've built something that provides best effort delivery. In other words, the thing that we've built connects the entire internet, but it doesn't make any promises about your messages arriving. So what that means is your packets could get dropped, that is, lost in the network, and they don't arrive. Your packets could get corrupted. Maybe a 1 accidentally gets flipped to a 0, and IP doesn't do anything about that. Your packets could get delivered out of order. If you send 3 packets, they might not arrive in the same order that you sent them. And IP doesn't make any promises about any of this. IP says, I will try my best to deliver the packet. If it works, that's great. And if it doesn't work, that's too bad. I'm not going to do anything about it because my only job is to connect up the entire internet. And I'm not thinking at all about providing reliability. So if you actually want additional reliability properties, for example, you want your packets to actually arrive, and you want corrupted packets to get fixed or detected, and you want packets to arrive in order. If you have additional requirements on the data that you're sending, then you have to build more layers because layer 3 didn't provide these services. So we have to move to additional higher layers to achieve reliability. So this is why we can't stop at layer 3, and we have to keep going upwards to layer 4. So that's it for layer 3. Once again, we have connected the entire internet up using a series of routers that forward packets for us. And the packet can now take multiple hops across the internet to its destination. And coming up next, we have to figure out how to implement additional properties that we might want, such as reliability or in-order delivery, because layer 3 doesn't provide those things. So here we are at layer 4. Now we're going to try and implement some of those reliability properties that we wanted at layer 3, but we didn't get. And this is something we'll talk about in a lot more detail later. That's true for all the layers, but layer 4 as well. So don't worry if this doesn't make all the sense in the world for now. But what layer 4 is going to do is it's going to allow us to get additional properties. For example, I can guarantee that the packets are going to arrive, and they're going to arrive in the same order, and they're not going to be corrupted when they arrive. So layer 4 can use layer 3 as a building block to then build additional features such as reliability. Now, once you get to layer 4, something else you'll notice is that instead of thinking about data in terms of individual packets, we can start thinking in terms of connections. So layer 4 is where I think we start to make the switch from thinking in terms of packets to thinking in terms of connections. And once again, this will probably make more sense once we talk about actual layer 4 protocols. But as a bit of a preview, when we talked about layers 1, 2, and 3, we just thought about packets getting sent across the network. There wasn't really any connection between the packets. Each packet was processed independently. I go to the post office, I have a letter, the letter gets sent. And maybe tomorrow I have another letter, I go to the post office, and it gets sent. And there was no relation between the first letter that I sent and the second letter that I sent. Now, once I get to layer 4, because I'm starting to think about reliability, I can start thinking not in terms of these individual packets that are all separate from each other, but I can start thinking in terms of connections. And that could be a long-lived connection between 2 people who are constantly exchanging data back and forth. So layer 4's reliability guarantees allow us to stop thinking in terms of individual packets, which are hard to think about, and they allow us to think in terms of persistent connections, which might be easier to think about from the perspective of someone writing an application. So if you're writing code, you don't want to have to think about individual packets being sent and received. It's much nicer to be able to think about a connection to someone else, and then you send and receive data in that connection. Something we'll see again later, but wanted to call it out now as a bit of a preview. So Now we can have this long-lived connection between host A and host D. Instead of thinking about individual packets flying across the internet with no relation to each other, we can now think about A and D exchanging long messages between each other. And layer 4 lets us think in terms of these two computers having a long-lived connection instead of individual packets flying around. So that's layer 4. We now have longer data, reliability guarantees. And finally, we can move to layer 7. Now, we've actually already been at layer 7 when we talked about the web. Anything that you build on top of the internet lives at layer 7. So this is where you, as the programmer, can specify different things that you want to send and receive using the internet. So layers 1, 2, 3, and 4, that was building the mail system. We built the mail system to send mail, but we didn't care what was in the mail. Layer 7 is the place where you actually get to define what you're sending. Maybe you're sending love letters between two people. Maybe you're sending packages because you're a delivery service. You can do all these different things using the postal system. And similarly, we can do different things using the internet. For example, we could build the web. We could have people download HTML web pages that they can read. Or we could use the internet to build an online game where two users are able to sync up with each other. And that's different from HTML web pages, but that's another application you can use. I could use the internet for video calls. That's not the same as the web. That's a different application. We could use it for SSH. So there's lots of different things you can do at layer 7. This is where the programmer gets to implement their own chosen purpose on top of the internet, where they specify what is being sent. So that's a very quick whirlwind tour of all 7 of the layers, well, all 5, I guess. Now, once again, it's OK if it felt a little bit fast. We'll go into each one in more detail soon. But for now, we just wanted you to get a big picture of what all the layers look like so that you're ready to dive into each one in more detail.